Is the incredible talent and the knowledge and just the people that are in our district. And this next speaker is one that I look forward to hearing every district conference, and I get the honor this year of introducing him. So coming up is Lt Col Rick Francona, and Rick is a member of the E Club State of Jefferson. He's a retired Air Force intelligence officer and a Middle East specialist with multiple tours of duty in the region. He's been including Iraq and Syria, as well as having been the personal Arabic interpreter and advisor to General Norman Schwarzkopf during the Gulf War. That would be fascinating. In 1995, while serving with the CIA in northern Iraq, he survived an attempt on his life by Iraqi agents. Rick is currently a military analyst for CNN. Please help me welcome Lt Col Rick Francona.
Okay, thank you. And just a few admin notes to get started there. I'm going to stand in front of you to prove that I actually own a pair of long trousers. If any of you have seen me from out behind the desk, I'm usually wearing sweatpants, shorts, or I don't know, how many other things, whatever.
Moving right along.
You guys all know most of who I am. So she did mention CNN. This has been a great gig for me. I remember, if you remember, when the first time we talked, it was years ago, maybe 15 years ago, and I was driving to Eugene from Port Orford several times a week just to do a 5-minute interview. I got it down to 3 hours, 10 minutes, door to door. So that's 6.5 hours in a car, whenever they wanted me, for a 5-minute interview. So they invented this thing called Skype. And CNN sent me this, I call it studio in a box. Camera, light, microphone, and all that. That's not a bad picture for a Skype call. And they like it well enough that I until I went down to the desert for this winter, I had not been in the studio for over a year. But I do probably 15 interviews a month. It varies on what's going on. When they asked me, when Dave said, would you speak? I'm sorry, when Governor Dave asked me if I would speak, I said, well, yeah, I'd be happy to. He said, what's your topic? I said, well, the same thing it always is. Current crisis in the Middle East, put the date in. I've been using that slide for 15 years. Yeah. But today we're going to talk, I'm going to just update you on the fight on ISIS, and then we'll go wherever you want to go. I'm going to leave a little more time for question and answers because that always takes up more time. And tell me what you're interested in. I'll give you my thoughts. And before we go any further, I no longer represent the Department of Defense, and trust me, I don't represent CNN. You can take that however you want. Okay, and I'm going to intersperse trivia questions so to keep you awake, because some of this can be very dry, lots of numbers, boring stuff, So we'll have trivia questions to keep you awake. Now, I know there are people in this room who know the answer to that. Where's Barbara? You don't get to play. Near to you. Other guys, okay. Anybody? Okay, what type of aircraft is that? A jet? That's okay, that's good. That's good. Now let's narrow that down. Fighter jet. Okay, more? Who knows? Somebody must know. F-16. F-15E, Strike Eagle. It's an F-15E Strike Eagle. It's got two pilots, a pilot and a weapons system operator. It's a great aircraft. And the reason I chose that aircraft as a trivia quiz is because that's my goddaughter there, and she just married the guy flying that jet. And she is a former Rotary Student of the Month, Ryla Camper, GSE team member at Argentina, and was a Rotarian, but has moved to be with her husband wherever they're deployed. And so we're going to get her into E Club, I think, so she can still be a member. But anyway, that was their proposal picture. He returned from the Persian Gulf, jumped out of his jet, got down on his knees, and asked her to marry him. Huh? They make movies about that stuff. And I have to be careful how they say this, because I mentioned this the other day. I said, I just married my goddaughter. And someone looked at me and said, what? I said, no. I officiated the ceremony. Online, $30. Anybody can do it. So I did. I married him. It was a great thing. Trivia quiz number 2. I know we have world travelers in this group. People have gone overseas on Rotary exchanges, Rotary missions. Where is this? Take a good guess. Where? Come on, I'm talking Middle East now. Think of a city in the Middle East, big one. Jewish, Christian, Jerusalem. Okay, it's the Church of Mary Magdalene, and on the mountain, you can see the Garden of Gethsemane, Mount of Olives. If you've never been to Jerusalem, go. All the other cities were good too. Baghdad, I prefer to remember Baghdad how it was before, not like it was. Okay, so I'm going to start the history of the fight against ISIS in 2007. We're up over here too. In 2007. I'm going to go through this rather quickly because I know most of you pay attention to the news. I give this talk a lot to like college students, and they have no clue. So, 2007, the situation in Iraq wasn't that good. We needed to get some additional troops there. General Petraeus went to the president and said, I need about 22,000 more troops. He does that. We also strike an alliance with the local tribes, and this was really easy. Because, Al-Qaeda in Iraq had a resurgence. And they were taking over all these areas in Anbar province. And Petraeus said, hey, I got a great idea. These tribal sheikhs don't want to live under this strict Islamic fundamentalism. So I'll go to them and say, listen, you want to get out from under that? You need to ally with the Americans. And they said yes, and they started fighting with us. And it worked. Al-Qaeda in Iraq was defeated, almost totally destroyed. It was getting so good by 2008, we signed a status of forces agreement with the Iraqis saying that we would leave in the year 2011, security situation permitting. This was an agreement between the guy on the right, George Bush, and the guy on the left, whose name is Nouri al-Maliki. I normally spit after I say that, but in deference to the ladies. So you know what I think of Nouri al-Maliki. So in 2011, we depart. I personally think this was a mistake. And since I do military analysis for a living, you should take some stock. And it was our own fault. What we didn't have was a status of forces agreement. We couldn't legally stay there, and we weren't able to get one. Now, I don't think that at this time we had President Obama there, he really wanted to get us out of there. I don't think he tried hard enough, but that's my opinion. But legally, we had to leave. So he pulled the troops out. This set up a cascading series of events that it's real. In 2017, it's real easy to say, "Oh, that was a mistake." But back then, everybody was tired of Iraq. They wanted out. So this sounded like a good thing. Let's just declare victory and go home. Well, in a war, see, the other side gets a vote on whether the war is over. And Al-Qaeda in Iraq decided the war wasn't over. So as soon as we left in early 2012, we see Al-Qaeda in Iraq come back with a vengeance. Excuse me. Much of this, again, our fault, because we had told the world December 31st, 2011, we're gone. So if you're Al-Qaeda and you know the Americans are leaving at the end of 2011, what do? You wait. Remember the Vietnam, the Ho Chi Minh parable? He said, yeah, we understand. You have the fancy watches. And we have the time. We just wait. And that's what they did. And as soon as we left, we saw several things happen. As I said, this is a cascading thing of events. The Iraqi Shias take over. Now, the Sunni Shia split, I talked to you about this before. Anyway, the Shias are the majority in Iraq by the ballot box. They take over, and they start replacing all of the qualified Sunni military commanders. And there's no war now because we had defeated everybody. We were on our way home. So everything's great. It's peacetime Iraq, such as peacetime can be. Al-Qaeda really hasn't started their resurgence. So all these Shia brigade, battalion commanders start selling off all the military equipment that we've given to them. Because, a 2.5-ton truck is a 2.5-ton truck. It doesn't have to be a military truck. It can be great for running a business. Bulldozers, doesn't matter if it's Army bulldozer, they're all Caterpillars. They're all D6s. They run the same. So you sell them off. I don't know if it's right, Mike. D6, one of the big ones. Okay, hold that thought. Meanwhile, in Syria, we see the Arab Spring take place. And I'm going to go through Syria very quickly. The Syrians decide they want to have a revolution, just like they had in Tunisia, just like they had in Egypt. In Egypt, it was successful. In Tunisia, it was successful. The Syrians try it. Not successful, because the Syrian government is not going to be pushed around by its people. What were they thinking? Like they get a vote? Actually, they do get a vote. But in Syria, it's not a secret ballot. You sign your ballot. So a couple of Syrian election stories. We had a very good friend in Syria. He was a doctor. And we were invited over to his house for dinner on election day. And I went over. It's always good to talk to locals. And I said, so, Dr. Rafiq, how'd the voting go? He goes, he says, let me tell you how voting works here. He says, I went to work in the morning. I worked at a hospital. He says, I walked in, and there were a couple of goons standing in front of the hospital with the director. And they called me aside and said, Dr. Rafiq, come over here. And said, yes, you know, you're a very busy man. You've got surgery all day, and you probably want to be with your family tonight. Well, when are you going to go to the polls? We've taken the liberty of bringing your ballot to you, and we filled it out for you. If you would just initial it, we're all done here. And he says, and that's how I would have been. And we're sure you wanted to vote for the president. So the president's normally elected with like 99.3% of the vote. So the joke in Damascus was always, well, the clerk runs in and says, Mr. President, you've just been reelected with 99.3% of the vote. What more could you ask for? He said, well, the names of the 0.7 for a start. Okay, so we see the Syrians, let me go back. Okay, so the Syrians react just like that. They turn the Syrian army loose on these people with a vengeance. And the Syrian army, and there are patriots in Syria. Let's not cast them all in one light. There are many Syrians who said, this is not what I signed up for. I joined the Syrian army not to fight my own people. I joined it to fight who? And if you ask a Syrian, they'll say the same thing today. Israel. That's the number one enemy. They still call it, in Arabic, it's very different the way they describe it. And you know right away that there's the enemy and there's other enemies. And they said, we're not going to do this. So they defected and they formed the Free Syrian Army. And they also had some civilians. They were getting foreign assistance from outside countries. Most of the assistance wasn't effective. We weren't giving them good stuff. We were just giving them, we're sending them MREs. Anybody know what an MRE is? It's meals rejected by it's meals ready to eat. It's the army ration. I mean, they're really awful. The old C rations were much better, right? Mike, right? Yeah. And so, if you ever eat an MRE, well, first of all, I challenge anybody. You can go to a store, go to one of these survival stores, buy an MRE. You can order them online, and eat one, because you're going to ingest about 5,500 calories. Well, because they're meant for like an 18-year-old infantry guy fighting all day. They're awful. We used to trade them. I don't know why anybody would accept them, but we used to trade them with the French in Desert Storm, because the French rations were much, much better than ours. They had a little bottle of wine in them. They were nice. So in 2012, the FSA had been very effective against the Syrian army, and they had a request for help. They said, we can't do this alone. We need external help. They says, if you'll just send us the weapons we need, we'll do this. And the Secretary of State said yes. Secretary of Defense said yes, let's do this. And the Chairman of the Joint Chiefs said yes, let's do this. Okay, trivia. Who were they? This is 2012. Who's the Secretary of State? Hillary Clinton. Who's the Secretary of Defense? Try again. Italian guy. Panetta. I knew that. Chairman of the Joint Chiefs. Irish guy. Singer. Marty Dempsey. But there's only one vote that counts. The president said no. He did not want to get us into another war in the Middle East. Right or wrong? That's a decision. So, Al-Qaeda in Iraq is watching what's going on in Syria, and they say, this is an opportunity. If the West won't help, we will. So they deploy all of these forces with all this equipment that they stole from who? The Iraqi army. That we had all this equipment that the Iraqi army had is now in the hands of ISIS. They send it to Syria, and they start fighting on behalf of the Free Syrian Army. Now, this equipment that we have given to the Iraqis, and the Iraqis have sold it to people, or the ISIS forces have taken it. What do we do now that they have it? We destroy it, right? So we have airstrikes, and we destroy all this equipment, all this U.S. military equipment, $70,000 Humvee. And so after it's all destroyed, the Iraqi army needs new ones, and where are they going to get them? From us, and who's going to pay for it? We are. Maybe we get the Saudis. I know the president said today, maybe we get some money from the Saudis. Did you see the size of that contract? I think it's almost like $500 billion when all said and done. Oh, that'll buy some nice hotels. Okay, Treaty 5. What's going on here? Polio. And can you see where that is? Look at the language below it. This is in Syria. Because not only did ISIS bring military equipment and fighters, what did they bring to Syria? Polio. And where did it come from? Pakistan, Afghanistan. Some guy in Al Qaeda in a cave in Pakistan carrying the polio virus gets on a bus and goes to Syria to fight the jihad and takes with him the polio virus. And we have an outbreak in Syria of polio. Polio had been non-existent in Syria for years, and there was an outbreak. Fortunately, they were able to get there very quickly, and even ISIS knows you don't want your kids to have polio. So they were able to call a truce, do all the kids, and be done with it. Fortunately, it has not recurred in Syria. So remember, when you send that money in, this is a plane right away. That was my Rotary moment.
What year was that?
I think it was 2014, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah. But there's a polio expert here who will tell me. So this is what they call themselves, the new organization in Syria. You'll keep hearing this on the news. They keep referring to it as Nusra. It's actually the Jabhat al-Nusra, the Victory Front. They also have these other names. Here, let me translate for you. Al Qaeda in the organization is Sham. Sham is the Arabic word for Damascus, for Syria, or the Levant. So they merge. They said, why do we have Al Qaeda in Iraq? And why do we have Al Qaeda in Syria? Why do we have two separate organizations? We both want to set up a caliphate. We don't want to set up caliphates. We want to set up the caliphate. So we'll form the Islamic State. And since it's in Syria, in Iraq and Syria, we'll call it Iraq and Syria. Well, you've heard this argument, right? Or you've seen both of these words, ISIS and ISIL. ISIL was the official U.S. government term for the organization until January 21st of this year. Now it's ISIS. What's the difference? ISIS rolls off the tongue better, I think. They both sort of mean the same thing. The problem is in the translation as Sham, as I told you. It means Damascus, it means Syria, and it means the Levant, the whole area, depending on context. So no one was really sure, did they mean Iraq and Syria? Did they mean Iraq and Damascus? Did they mean Iraq and the whole area? I think they meant Iraq and the whole area. I think ISIL technically is the correct term, but we have been told at CNN that we're going to use ISIS. So I love ISIS. When you say Levant, it's that whole area in red. So it's Iraq, which is Mesopotamia. They don't use the word Iraq except they usually say the land between the two rivers. Now, I remember when I went to school, and I know they don't do this today, but they used to still teach geography. And we learned where Mesopotamia was, and it was the land between the two rivers, and they still use that term. This is in the ISIS map. This is what they believe they should have. Fortunately for us, unfortunately for them, we've been whittling away at that, beginning with U.S. airstrikes in 2014. Now, we'll do another trivia. Type aircraft. Somebody said it earlier. F-16, very good. This one belongs to the wing in Italy. But the point I want to show you here is, when we conduct airstrikes, virtually every weapon that comes off of a U.S. aircraft, be it Marine, Navy, or the Premier Force, Air Force, will be a precision-guided weapon. We do not drop dumb weapons anymore. And we've come up with a pretty ingenious package called a JDAM. And all these 500-pound and 2,000-pound dumb bombs we have, some going back to Vietnam, because we made millions of them. What do you do with all these things? We made a strap-on kit. You put a seeker on the front of it and steering fins on the back. And you turn a dumb bomb, you put precision-guided ammunition. Smarter way to go. Gets rid of all the old stuff. It's a heck of a lot cheaper. Still not cheap. But anyway, everything we do. Now, we're there in July of 2014. I call this when diplomacy fails, but that's me. So, the Syrian government is really starting to get hurt. ISIS is really not taking a beating yet, but something happens in the Sinai. The Russians lose a commercial airliner to ISIS. Because why would ISIS go after the Russians? Because of the Chechnya situation. So they've got their own internal Islamic terrorism problem, Islamic fundamentalism problem, radical extremism. So the Russians decide they're going to intervene in Syria as well. So now you've got the world's two premier air forces in the same airspace, flying at supersonic speeds with the world's greatest weapons. What could go wrong? Well, here's the problem with the Russians. See the circles I've just put there. Virtually every weapon coming off of a Russian airplane is a dumb bomb. Caused tremendous civilian casualties. I talked to the F-15E guys that I have met through my goddaughter, and they tell me they fly in the same airspace, sometimes going after the same targets in the same areas, and they said, we'll go in and we'll take off the corner of a building, of a specific building, a specific corner. Said the Russians will come in and take out the entire block. And the Russians seem to be immune to civilian casualties. They're also immune to such things as hospitals. In fact, if you look at the targeting of the Russians, some of their airplanes go through this air bases. The red blotches are where the Russians are striking. They say they're there to fight terrorism. All they're doing is fighting the rebels. They're keeping the regime in power, that's all they're doing, and causing a lot of civilian casualties. But what we've seen the Russians do, when the Russians go after, they start a campaign in a particular province, what they'll do is they'll go and destroy every hospital in that province. Now that is a war crime. Have you heard about this in the United Nations? No. Have you heard Amnesty International? No. They only go after us for some reason. And we make mistakes. We bomb mosques, we hit hospitals, it happens. You cannot drop this many munitions and not make mistakes. It's not a perfect world. But the Russians do this by design, and no one calls them on it. I'll get off my soapbox. So the goal of this was to contain ISIS. I got some bad news. We're not containing ISIS. Because ISIS knows they're losing the battle on the ground. And I didn't believe that I actually said this, but somebody actually sent me a tape of it. And this is, I still believe this. You cannot reason with ISIS. When someone says we're looking for a diplomatic solution to ISIS, there is no diplomatic solution to ISIS. You have to kill them. That's it. There's a diplomatic solution to the civil war in Syria. There's a diplomatic solution to Afghanistan. But there's no diplomatic solution to ISIS. You can't reason with these people. So hunt them down and kill them. And we're doing that very effectively. The situation in Iraq and Syria right now, the big battle going on right now, if you pick up your paper, I'm sure there'll be a story about Mosul. Tremendous casualties. The Iraqi military, special forces, police, and some of their militias that they've been in, their National Guard, are taking horrendous casualties. But they're taking this city back. They've been doing it for 7 months, and I think it'll take another couple of months. This is house to house, street by street. And the way ISIS fights is that what they do is they send not a car bomb, they send 20 car bombs at the same time. And you've got to stop these things before they get to you, or you're all dead. But they don't care, they're all suicide bombers. So it's a very, very tough battle for the Iraqis, probably one of the toughest battles ever fought in this part of the world. So I give the Iraqis a lot of credit for doing this, and it's going to take them a little bit more time. After they do that, they've got to clean out some of these pockets that are still left in Iraq, but that'll be more of a rolling up thing. Mosul's the big battle. And then that pushes the problem out of Iraq. And then when that's done, the Iraqis are going to say, what problem? They're not in Iraq anymore. It's a Syrian problem. Well, whose problem is that? Still ours. ISIS still represents a threat to us. So then we've got to take Raqqa. Raqqa is going to be probably the final geographic battle. They're going to move down into this area here, but that'll be a mop-up. Raqqa is going to be the final battle for ISIS as the organization exists today. And what are they going to do? They're going to go back to being Al-Qaeda in Iraq, because that's what they started as. There'll be an insurgency. When Raqqa falls, when Mosul falls, it's not over. This is not going to be over for a long time. I want you to remember that. Don't think that when we get rid of them in Raqqa that it's over, because it's not. That's the situation there. I don't want to spend too much time on that. But we're angering the Turks because we're arming the Kurds to do this. The Kurds are the most effective fighting force on the ground over there, and we're going to give them guns because they're good at it. And the Turks said, you can't give the Kurds guns, they're terrorists. They said, well, I'll tell you why. That's not. See up in the left where it says Turkish backed Free Syrian Army? That's what the Turks want. They want them to liberate Raqqa. They are 100 road miles from Raqqa. Well, they said, well, just have the Kurds open up that corridor, that yellow arrow from the Turkish border down to Raqqa. Yeah, after the Kurds have been bombing the Turks for 2 weeks straight, the Kurds are going to say, yeah, just come on right through our territory. Chance of that happening? Zero. Then they said, okay, let's have a massive air assault. Well, who's going to fly that air assault? And it's stupid. The Kurds are there. The Kurds are within 5 miles of Raqqa. Tonight, actually, they're within 3 miles of Raqqa. They're going to mount the assault. The Turks are just going to have to suck it up. And now we're coming up with this myth of no-fly zone, or not yet, of no-fly zones. These areas in blue, also not going to work. Call me skeptical. This is so the Russians can say, nobody should fly there except us, and we'll bomb the rebels. We're going to bomb the terrorists. They believe anybody that takes up arms against the Syrian regime is a terrorist. So they got free rein for that. This is not the solution. The goal is to get everybody to the table. And I think, I'm not happy with this, but I think we're going to make a deal with the Russians. I think that we're going to say, okay, we don't care if the Assad regime survives as long as Assad himself goes. That's going to be the fig leaf by which we'll do this. And then we'll make a deal, we'll have a big conference, and the Ba'ath party, and there'll be a new leader, and it'll just be the same, more of. And then the Free Syrian Army needs to make the best deal they can get, some sort of access to political system, amnesty, whatever, just to make this go away. Of course, ISIS will be gone at that time. I've told the Syrian rebels, learn to look what this, you know what that is? I told one of the FSA leaders, I said, you should learn what this is. It's the underside of a bus, because you're about to be thrown under it. I'm serious. Okay, in the news you saw we had U.S. airstrikes in southeastern Syria on May 18th, was it 2 days ago? Because they were trying to reopen this road. See that orange line down there? That used to be the way that they used to rotate Shia militias in and out of Iraq. Now remember, in the geopolitical situation that is the Middle East, the Iraqis are our allies in Iraq. And the Iraqis are allied with the Syrian regime, which are our enemies on that side of the line. So we are allies over on this side of the line, our enemies on that side of the line, same people. And this is how they used to rotate people. This is what I do for a living. I mean, I did this for years. That's why I'm like I am. That's why Pescara has to be here gin and tonic. So they called me because at CNN I am Mr. Syria. Another Skype picture. Okay, where does this leave us? Let's get serious for a few minutes. Where does this leave us? This is a refugee camp in Jordan. This is what has happened. Syria, look at that. 18 million people population. 13 are refugees. 13 million people. That's 70% of the Syrian population don't live in their houses because they've been forced out by war. And you've got people like this trying to help. They're doing a great job, but I think there's a shelter box set up out there, isn't there? It's a great program. Our club really believes in this. And if your club doesn't have a shelter box program, come see me at the end of the program, because we sure do. And if you want to help, this is one way to do it, and it's Rotary sponsored. My club's Mr. Shelter Box. You can find me everywhere, you know that. Oh, donate button? Oh, I had a meeting with the Russian. I want to tell you guys now, before it comes out in the press, I have met with Russians. And I'll take some questions if I were president. I'm going to put the map up there, but I want to go, and I want to tell you, although I talk to you all the time about the Middle East, I want to tell you right now, the single most immediate threat to the United States, the tactical threat, not this, Iran, ISIS, those are all strategic threats to the United States. The immediate tactical threat to the United States is North Korea. And that was my parting shot on CNN the other day. A nuclear weapon on an ICBM should not be in your future. We have to say it, and my God, someday we have to mean it. I'm not advocating war, but I tell you what, these people can kill 1 million Americans like that. Oh, I'll go back to, I need to go back to that last map. Do I just go forward fast? Yeah, I can do that. We're running through time. Okay, questions? Ask me a question. I need the map so I can tell you what's going on.
Where does all the money come that sustains ISIL or ISIS? Is it from the lesser Saudi princes?
No, actually they sell stuff. They sell electricity and they sell oil. We've really put a dent in our oil production, but they controlled up until last week most of the major dams in Syria, and before that in Iraq. So they were selling electricity to who? To the Syrian regime and to the Iraqi government, because the Iraqi government has a choice. They got to buy electricity. Oil basically is smuggled out from northern Syria and was northern Iraq, but now northern Syria into where? Our NATO ally, Turkey. And not the Turkish government. These are Turkish businessmen who buy the stuff. And they've been able to sustain their operations. And they basically have pilfered everything in the land they control. They tax everything. So the people that live there are basically have been reduced to nothing. They just steal everything. We talked to people, and the Turks were telling us, you can't use the Kurds to liberate Raqqa, because the people who live in Raqqa are Sunni Arabs, and they don't want the Kurds. I said, well, okay. Then you read all the stuff that's coming out of Raqqa, people that have escaped. They say, we don't care who liberates us, just get these people out of here. And I'm saying, they'll take anybody. Anybody is better than ISIS. And the Kurds have already said, we're not interested in Raqqa. We'll liberate it because the Americans are basically paying us to do it. And when that's over, we'll turn it back over to some committee. So I personally think it's the right thing to do. I know the Turks disagree with me. But, yes, sir?
Do you think the Kurds will ever have a homeland?
Do I think the Kurds will ever have a homeland? Well, I sure hope so, because I spend a lot of time working with the Kurds. I like the Kurds, and I support their national aspirations. However, they sit on some of the world's most valuable real estate. If you look at where the northern part of Iraq, the northeastern part is actually the northern edge of Syria, mostly in the northeast, and the southeastern part of Turkey, and a little tiny bit of Iran. That's where the Kurds are. That's some of the world's most valuable real estate, because they're sitting on an ocean of oil, and no one is going to give part of it away. It's a problem. It's just a factor. They're the largest ethnic group in the world that doesn't have a country, and they're smart enough to know that they're probably not going to get a country, but they may get autonomous areas. Now, you look at northern Iraq. It's called the Kurdish Autonomous Region. It functions very well. It actually functions better than the rest of Iraq. The Syrians want to do the same thing. They're going to call it Rojava. And the Turks are absolutely adamant. Every time they talk about that, the Turks start bombing northern Syria. We have got to get our hands around Erdogan's throat and say, knock it off. But that's another fight for another day. So I think in the short term, the answer is no. In the long term, I would be really surprised. It's just not there. And most countries, when they go into these agreements, they have to sign it. They say, we recognize the territorial integrity of all the countries in the region, which defeats the chances of them. Others? Yes, sir?
Comment on the Iranian election.
Could I comment on Iranian elections? Yes. Rouhani won, as you know, by a lot. Rouhani is not a friend of the West. None of them. That was it. None of them are friends of the West. And everybody said, well, there's moderates and hardliners. No, that's like saying there's left-wing Democrats and right-wing Republicans. Which ones do you want? You don't want either one of them. But they're all bad, and none of them are good for us. There's no such thing as Iranian moderate. It is an oxymoron. Because here, and I call the Iranian election, this is a self-licking ice cream cone. Okay, because everybody that runs for office has to be blessed by the supreme leader. Okay, and who elects the supreme leader? The Council of Experts. And who appoints the Council of Experts? The supreme leader. And then they have an election, and if he doesn't like it, he just says, no, he can't be president. So it doesn't matter. And the authority of the country doesn't rest with the president. Who controls the army, the intelligence service, the police force, and the IRGC? The supreme leader, not the president. So it's really meaningless. We're stuck with the Iranians, probably as they are. I think the Iranian deal that we structured, and I'm going to blame John Kerry for this, I think he gave them too much. Not that I don't think we need an agreement with the Iranians. I favor an agreement with the Iranians, just not this agreement, because it's not verifiable. I think rather than eliminate their nuclear program, we postponed it. Okay, 10 years without a nuclear armed Iran, nothing wrong with that. But it's what they're able to do. In the meantime, we forgot that little ballistic missile thing.
Going back to the humanitarian crisis in the Middle East, actually there's probably more displaced persons now than after World War II in the United States.
Okay, is there a question there?
Rotary does shelter boxes,
Yeah.
and I'm only aware of one Rotary club, Rotary Club number 6 in New York, that has done anything for refugees in the refugee camp. So that they bought some medical equipment for curing refugees in Turkey. And I know Rotary doesn't like to do refugee relief except for samples of shelter box, but I'm throwing the gauntlet out there to say we as Rotary need to do something more evident than what we're doing now. And because there's nobody else to step in.
Everybody hear that basically? Okay. My comment on that would be, I agree with you. The problem is, this is too big of a problem for clubs to do. This is something that Rotary International as an organization. Listen, I'm going to speak as a personal Rotarian, not speaking for my club. I think taking the projects out of the hands of the clubs and making these giant projects was a bad idea. But in this case, only somebody with those bucks could make a difference, and Rotary can do that.
Well, I talked to Rotary Foundation about it, and the response has been, we don't do the refugees.
Yeah, well.
I'm saying nobody else is doing it.
Yeah.
Well,
Maybe the Rotary Foundation ought to remember who they work for.
right, I don't know.
My opinion. Don't tell the RI rep that. Linda.
So, what about Trump?
What about it?
Is he making things worse or better?
Don't, I don't want to get into it. I will say though, I'm very pleased with what he's doing in Saudi Arabia. I think that was an important thing to do. I think we need to have better outreach to the Muslim world, the Sunni Muslim world, with which we've had a great relationship over the years, and I think we need to make sure that that's still on track. But I really don't want to address U.S. politics. You.
Hey Rick, what's the
chances of the relationship with Turkey deteriorating to the point where we're unable to continue to work with them? Who fills that void?
Yeah.
And what are the consequences?
Yeah, great question. What happens if basically Turkey falls out of the fold, or even falls out of NATO? And the Turks are not being really helpful here, because the Turks are starting making inroads with all these Central Asian countries, and they're really, really getting in bed with the Russians, because the Turks have realized that the Europeans basically don't want them. The European Union, the Turks for years tried to get into the EU, and they've always been put off, and they finally realized that whether they believe it's a racist thing or a religion thing, they honestly believe that the European Union is not going to accept them. So now they're starting to look to the east. Eric, and then you, and then I'm done. Okay? Yeah.
I'm just curious about the release of information from President Trump to
The Russians.
Russia. Well, no, yeah, to the Russians. That's correct. Was that a big deal, or wasn't it?
Well, I don't think it was a big deal, because the president is the ultimate declassification authority. The problem is that if that information came from another government, and I've seen two plausible explanations. One was from the Israelis, and one was from the Jordanians. I personally think it was the Jordanians, given the information that it was. I know how I used to work with the Jordanians, so I think it was probably them. Is that if you release who it was, then you put the source at risk. That was the problem, not the information. Here's what we used to, we used to, when I was in Defense Intelligence Agency, we used to deal a lot with foreign governments, and we would give things to them all the time. The rule was, you can tell them what you know, not how you know. So that's the dividing line. If you cross that line, it's a problem. I just chalk it up to amateur. He's new at this. But this is why he has a national security advisor. When we used to do this, we would prepare talking points. When you go into this meeting, here's who you're meeting, here's why you're meeting, here's what he's going to say, and here's what you should say. And don't go, this is the line right here. Yeah. And yes, ma'am, you've been very patient.
Stand up. Could you comment on why North Korea has gotten into the news big time now?
Yes.
And maybe why you think the Saudi Arabia deal was a good
The Iran deal. Or the Saudi Arabia deal? Money.
It was in the news today.
The Saudi deal, because it will give the Saudis better capabilities, and we need an ally in the Persian Gulf to counterbalance Iranian ascendancy. The Iranians are testing new missiles one right after the other. It's a problem because of John Kerry allowing the ballistic missile thing to go back to come out of the sanctions. So now they're driving a truck through this loophole. So I think the Saudi deal is good because we need a counterbalance to that. Plus, it's a lot of money for the U.S. economy. So who's the world's largest arms dealer? We are by far. Anyway, but we built this stuff. So,
North Korea was
and North Korea. Okay, North Korea was a fault of successive U.S. administrations, both sides. Everybody can take the blame on this. We never held them to account because we thought they couldn't do it. Listen, I've seen North Korean equipment that's been captured on battlefields in the Middle East. They build good stuff. They're good engineers. They execute it well, and they maintain it well. If they say they're going to develop an ICBM, they will. If they say they're going to miniaturize a nuclear warhead, they will. That is a direct threat to this country because we waited too long, and we're just going to have to say, okay, enough. Now, nobody wants to go to war. No one wants to blow up stuff in North. Well, I wouldn't mind blowing stuff in North Korea, but I'm kidding. Come on, people. I know when I go outside, oh, you warmonger. Okay, fine. No, we have got to hold them to account. You've got to tell them, in no uncertain terms, you can't do this. And they say, well, why? We're a sovereign nation. We can do whatever we want. Is that good enough? You want to tell your kids that at night? They're a sovereign nation. And with that, I think I'm done.